Net retention is one of, if not the most important metric that software companies use. That is something that drives behavior. When you're focused on that metric, it will drive better behavior, I think, in your organization. That behavior is that you're now focused more on expanding existing customers.
If you're not measuring with that formula Jim just talked about, what you could be doing is you could be bringing in a ton of new customers and new business and not going anywhere with your business.
We're at a point in our industry where what Jim was talking about, understanding, net retention is super important. Like, it's one of the top 3 drivers, right, of success.
What are some of the most common mistakes MSPs make when it comes to growing their business? Get the answers to this and other vital questions in this episode of Sunny Silver Linings. Joining Sunny today, we have Jack Daly, International Sales Coach, the one and only Gary Pica, founder and president of True Methods, and James Lippie, CEO, SaaS Alerts. And remember, if you enjoy content like this, be sure to subscribe, like, and share. Now, here's your host, the founder and CEO of IT by Design, Mr. Sunny Kayla. Over to you, Sunny.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today. Jack, Jim, and Gary, thank you so much for taking the time to join Sunny's Silver Linings.
Great to be with you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. A pleasure, always.
Yeah, and thank you, Jack. And Jack, we go back to the COVID year when we met, and we have been enjoying this relationship and really adding a lot of value to the channel together. You added a lot of value to me. And I think everyone on this call, from Gary, a lot of value in my life, and Jim. So I have a lot of gratitude for 3 of you because you guys are true go-givers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Jack, so I'm going to start with you. I know you have a lot of experience within MSP channel and other communities as well, or other verticals as well. What do you see in the market right now in terms of what are the common challenges that you see with business owners?
So, Sonny, as you know, I do quite a bit of CEO coaching one-on-one. And I've had several MSPs that have been clients of mine over the last half a dozen years. And when I'm asking about what their vision is, what I'm trying to get is an understanding is, what is it they're trying to build? What does the company look like out in the future, whether it's 5 years out or 10 years out? Stephen Covey said it way better than me or anybody I've heard, and that is begin with the end in mind. Now, I quote unquote dumb it down from there, and I tell people, you can't get there unless you know what there is. So I can't begin to help a CEO or a business owner with their business until I understand what the definition of success is, what the destination is. You can't start out on a trip and make it an effective trip without knowing where you're going. And so what does it look like from a top line? What does it look like from a bottom line? What does it look like from territories? How many salespeople? What type of margins? What the business channels that you're going to be operating in? All of those things should be wrestled down early on, so that you can effectively map out, the map accordingly.
Thank you, Jack. And vision is the number one thing. So having clarity and then being able to communicate with people around you is really, really important. And Gary, what are you seeing in the business world? What are the common challenges that you are seeing with business owners?
Yeah. So right now, like in the MSP community, everything's just at hyper speed. Like, so few things changed so slowly for so long. And now they're changing at an increased rate. And that requires more discipline. It also requires that vision. So if you think about where you want to be in 5 years and you weren't dragging behind you all your customers, all your employees, all your decisions, all of your expectations that only got you this far, what would you do differently? Right? If you had a clean sheet of paper, and it's really trying to move them, like to Jack, to your point, to start to think, because we're in a very noisy business, right? Most businesses are noisy. And so they tend to get dragged down by their current situation. And Jim, I got to watch SaaS alerts since the seed of the idea to where you are now. And so maybe you could talk to the personal situation because you've done it so quickly.
Yeah. So first of all, I agree both with Jack and Gary, and how important vision is. I definitely learned a lot working under Fred at Kaseya, and took a lot of that in how we've structured and built out SaaS alerts. One of the things that I've come to understand, and I do a presentation for a lot of MSPs at various shows, and Sonny, I think you've actually seen this one before, called MSP Time Machine.
Mm-hmm.
And really it's all about, because I spent the first 10 years of my career as an MSP. And the second 10 now have been on the software side supporting MSPs. So the premise of MSP Time Machine is I wish I could take everything I've learned in the last 10 years in the software business and bring it back to my MSP.
Yeah.
And if I were to do that, I would do things differently. And just to get a little tactical for a second, one thing I would do is operate, first of all, a lot more like a software company in terms of wedge products, right? So as an MSP, and I was guilty of this certainly throughout my career as an MSP, I'd literally done thousands of sales calls as an MSP. You walk in with the expectation that you're going to try to close the prospect on a managed services deal. And you either walk out with that contract or you walk out with nothing. It's an all or nothing proposition.
Yeah.
Right. What I think and what I learned in the software business is that you want to strip out as much friction in the sales process as possible. Because if you're going to try to go in there and sell a prospect on $150, $200, $250 per user per month deal for a 50-employee company, that's a huge commitment, right? But if you can walk in and say, you know what, does your existing provider do XYZ? If the answer is no to any one of those, then you know what, I have something that I can do for you, and it's going to be a nominal fee, and let's just start slow. I can show you what we can do, and over time, and once you develop that rapport, that relationship, then you can start to ease your way into the rest of the contract. And, obviously we call that land and expand. Software companies do land and expand extremely well. MSPs don't do it as well. And also understanding my cost of acquisition better, right? Like one of the things I never really understood all that well, I think most MSPs don't. If you went to a MSP and said, what's your CAC, customer acquisition cost, most of them probably wouldn't know the answer to that question. But it's really key in understanding your overall economics of your business.
Yeah. And the way MSPs are delivering, pricing and packaging, and I think nowadays it's no different than a software company, to your point. All these PE companies are asking their companies to run these subscription-based offerings, just like software. But you have a special formula that you shared last time. I remember there was one panel during Datto, and I asked you at that conference, that interview with you, Jim.
Yeah.
It was something related to net retention. Like how do you? Yeah. So can you share that again? There was a really simple formula. It resonated really well with a lot of our listeners.
Yeah. So net retention is one of, if not the most important metric that software companies use, right? So the formula is new sales, net new sales, plus expansion, what you get from existing customers, minus churn equals net retention, right? So that is something that drives behavior. When you're focused on that metric, it will drive better behavior, I think, in your organization. That behavior is that you're now focused more on expanding existing customers, as opposed to, I can tell you again, a lot of things I will share, I am guilty for doing it the wrong way initially. And I feel like I've learned over time. We never track net retention at my MSP. We looked at everything in silos. What's our customer satisfaction? What is our new logos that we're bringing on, right? We never looked at them in tandem to drive, I think, the behavior that ultimately produces better results overall.
Yeah.
Jim's really making a great point. As you know, I'm a runner, and I've run 100 marathons.
Wow.
And when you put the 100 marathons aside, talk about all the miles that you had to run prior to each of the marathons to be prepared to run a marathon, right? Well, what I can tell you with all that in my background, I hate running on a treadmill. I want to be out and seeing new things in my training and in my races. If you're not measuring with that formula Jim just talked about, what you could be doing is you could be bringing in a ton of new customers and new business and not going anywhere with your business. Look, the hardest thing that we do in business, and I may offend some people when I say this, but the hardest thing that goes on in business is getting an outsider, a prospect, to trust you with their business.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've earned that trust, then your primary role should be keeping them happy and seeing if there's other things that you can bring to the party to help them with their business, whether it's provided by you or somebody that you know is a third party. But the more that we can retain and grow our existing business, I can tell you, having been an expert in sales for over 4 decades, it's a lot easier to do that than to win the trust of a new prospect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jack is hitting the nail on the head specifically, and I know Jack isn't like specific to MSPs. He's obviously worked with them, but Sonny, you, me, and Gary kind of been in this industry for the last 20 plus years, and we all know MSPs, one of their biggest challenges is selling, right? And selling specifically to new prospects, because as Jack is saying, developing that trust is very difficult. But what MSPs are fantastic at, right, is working with their existing customers because they already have that level of trust, right? So why not leverage that trust to try to sell more net new products or services?
And they don't. Customers. Enough of them don't, Jim. Like, you're right. They're all. If you listen, by nature, you trust your MSP, or you wouldn't have them, right?
Exactly.
Like, it's a strategic, very important strategic relationship that they have, but not enough of them, leverage it. Not enough MSPs. They have these relationships. In the past, they didn't have to turn that trusted relationship into a different commercial relationship, right? But today, based on the way their customers are investing in using technology, security landscape, they need to be changing what they do, and often going back and having a conversation about why the customers need to invest more. And they have this barrier that kind of keeps them from doing it. And it's funny because I see it in the peer groups, people that are early on, and then as time goes by, when they realize that their customers really invest so little in them compared to all their expenses. Like, we're a small expense to our customers, but you have like these self-limiting beliefs that keep them. But we're at a point in our industry where what Jim was talking about, understanding, net retention is super important. Like, it's one of the top 3 drivers, right, of success.
Yeah. So those are great points. Now, what are the common mistakes? Gary, we can stay with you now. What are the most common mistakes that you see MSPs making?
Yep. So today, the number one mistake I see is this. What's funny is it's the same one I saw back when I started in the industry. It's just more profound now, and that is packaging and pricing. too few MSPs because they package not just tools, but so many roles and functions into their monthly fee that they don't really have a good idea of what their cost is. And so they don't charge enough for their services, or if they do understand the cost, they're not very good at explaining the value in a way to get current customers and new customers to make that investment. And what's funny is the ones that crack that code, Sonny, and command the highest prices are the same MSPs that sell the most new recurring revenue because they figured out the value proposition. When I remember the first time I did a packaging and pricing seminar, it was at one of the early IT nations, and the room was packed. And I thought to myself, well, this is only going to last a short time, right? Everyone's going to figure it out. We'll move on to the next thing. But I still see that. And Jim, you deal with it every day as people are taking SaaS alerts and then trying to figure out different ways how to go to market.
Yeah, it's really kind of insane because with now 775 MSPs, we see a real variety of how people take our cybersecurity products to market. And the ones that are a lot more aggressive in terms of how they price and package it are absolutely killing it. And they're not even giving their customers a choice, right? They're saying, look, this is really important. If you don't find it important, that's fine. You can opt out of it, but you're going to opt out. You're going to sign a waiver that says you believe that this is not important. Otherwise, we're putting it in your environment. And as opposed to trying to sell it one by one to every customer, we see MSPs literally increasing their monthly recurring revenue, in some cases $50,000 to $100,000 a month. Those are for the big MSPs, right? But we have smaller MSPs that have increased their monthly recurring revenue by $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 basically within 30 days by taking that approach.
Yeah.
See, Sonny, it's all the same thing. It's mindset around, one, having command over your business, right? And the cost drivers. And then two, understanding the value proposition, right? So that you can go to market, both current customers and new customers. Yeah. And I think that's at the center now, what's driving thriving MSPs and why average MSPs get stuck.
I would say, to just expand on that point a little bit, people's own paradigms get in their way. Right? Like what they think, they essentially impose on how they think their customers are going to think.
Yeah.
And that is wrong. That gets in the way of actually doing the best things for your business. And maybe it's fear that, your customers aren't going to react the way that you want them to. But more often than not, when I see people take that leap and do something that is going to significantly help their business and break out of that paradigm, they end up winning a lot more than they think they would otherwise.
Yeah.
Sonny, can I tell a quick story?
Yes, absolutely, Gary.
I don't want to monopolize this, but it fits in. So this is some years back. I'm doing a presentation in Philadelphia here. I live in South Jersey, just outside of Philly. And I was talking about packaging and pricing, right, in my hometown. And an MSP came up to me afterwards and says, well, that all sounds great, Gary, but, I could never charge those prices. My customers already complained that I'm spending too much and I'm already more than my competitors. And I had him look out the window and I said, if you go like 7 miles that way is the first MSP that I built, and you could almost see the second one across the water. They're both hundreds of customers that are paying those prices. I'm not sure what to tell you, but this is not my opinion. This is my observation. And once he got through his initial kind of frustration and anger, I was able to say, listen, on the drive home, think about this because it applies to all areas of your business of a self-belief, right?
That's a great point, Gary and Jim. Pricing and packaging is a major challenge, especially in the last 2-3 years, because talent cost has gone up, tool cost has gone up, like overall cost of doing business is up. And MSPs are really struggling for whatever fear, uncertainty, doubt that they have to raise the price, because the only way for your EBITDA to be healthy, if you can price and package properly. But the value prop, that is the main thing. Your value prop needs to make sense for that customer. And so one thing that I'm part of a strategic coach, and so Dan Sullivan's formula for pricing packaging is that whatever is scary for you in terms of, don't look at don't create your pricing based on your competition. Build your pricing based on your unique value prop. And if you can do things uniquely, there is no competition. You can set your own price, and whatever scares you, you add 25% to that, and that is your price. That's your client rate card for your offerings. So thank you for sharing that. That a lot of businesses are struggling in the MSP world, being non-profitable, and the root cause is what Gary, you and Jim are talking about: the pricing, packaging, the value prop, and having that fear of not charging right and taking every customer in. And there is a big percentage of the industry, they're not making money, and there is a significant percentage where they don't know if they're making money or not. So Jack, what is the?
Let me jump in here.
Yes.
In the interest of maybe giving suggested solutions, and I've got 2 points I want to make. As you know, I'm a voracious reader. Last year, I read 104 books, and it's called lifelong learning. If I were an MSP owner, the book that I would want to devour when it comes to this pricing issue is Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson. Because if you think about it, Apple is priced higher than all of their competitors, and they have no problem with it. But what Steve was brilliant at was creating the perception of value. Now, you have to deliver on the perception, but first-time sales are not based on real value. If I'm an MSP trying to win new business from a new prospect, they're going to buy based on the perception that I'm conveying, not the reality, because reality doesn't happen until we've landed the account. So what I challenge the MSPs listening here is, what are you doing that's analogous to what Steve Jobs and Apple have done over the years in creating that perceived value? And that's why when he issued a new product, he was the guy on stage, pulling out of his pocket 10,000 songs in his pocket, right? That's the perception of value, and that's the differentiator. And then price does not matter. So that's the first book. And the second book that I would recommend is The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And in my mind, it is the quintessential Bible for an entrepreneur and business owner. And that's the book that gave us the expression working in your business versus on your business, and distinguishing between the two. And what I've seen in so many MSPs is the person who is primarily responsible for bringing new business in is the owner. How do you scale if the scaling of the company is dependent pretty much solely on the owner? Where is the breakdown? Why are you not capable of bringing on additional people to represent your company in an effective way? And I see it over and over again in the MSP world where that's a fail. And if you're the primary, or you're the only salesperson in the company, then there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many deals that you get done. And by the way, when you win over a new account, you've got to go and take care of that account, which then takes your eye off of the ball of new business generation. So again, they're back to the hamster or the treadmill, not going anywhere.
Yeah, 168 hours, Jack. That's in my one-on-one session. I've learned, Sunny, you have only 168 hours. And the first thing that you made me do is hire an admin. That if you don't have the admin, you are the admin. I loved that line. And I'm like, okay, let me just immediately hire that admin. And that saved me a lot of time and helped me take that time and invest in some other areas where my time was required. And thank you for sharing those resources, Jack. And there is one more resource that I want to share with our MSP friends is Piconomics. That is the best way for MSPs to build their go-to-market strategy with pricing, packaging, and overall, if you want to really see math and science behind that pricing and packaging. Jack Gary has done a great job for many, many years. He has been building these tools and frameworks for MSPs, and one of the a great resource he has is called Piconomics, math and science behind MSP's P&L. So my next question is, as we know, MSPs, normally businesses depend on our talent, our people. And one thing that we all know is that top talent requires good culture. So what strategies have you found most effective for building a strong company culture? And I would like to start with Jack. Jack, what advice do you have for MSP friends to build a strong culture?
So you're on to something there, Sonny, with regard to the culture, because if you can get the people that already work in your company to be evangelists, they can go out into the market and secure new business. The guy that did that really well outside of your industry was Tony Hsieh at Zappos, and he created this culture where anybody that was working in the company just wanted to share with their neighbors, with their friends, with their family, what a great place it was to go to work. And they had just a massive influx of interest in that. I hear this all the time, Sonny, about how hard it is to find good people. But when you pursue that and say, and let's go back to your 168 hours a week, we're all given the same 168. How many hours a week are you allocating as a company, as an MSP, to finding people? So direct answer to your question, how do I build that culture? I see it as being 4 cornerstones or 4 levels of foundation. One is recognition systems. People are dying for recognition. Recognize your people in so many different ways, and it doesn't have to be financial. Secondly is communication systems. Third is personal and professional development processes. And most people hear professional development, but when I was running a company and building companies, it was finding out what people wanted to do with their lives and helping them with their lives beyond business. So personal development. And then the fourth is empowerment processes of creating an environment where people are enabled or encouraged to make decisions as if they were the owner, as opposed to seeking approval or something of that nature from the boss.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jack. And Jim, what's your advice to MSPs? Like, what strategies worked for you and to build a strong company culture?
Yeah, it's just so funny because as I'm listening to Jack, it so much resonates to the point where back in 2003, I wrote a book called 5 Management Principles in One Creed. Creed is actually an acronym, CREAD, and it stands for Communication, Recognition, Empowerment, Accountability, and Development. And the contention is, if you use those 5 principles every single day in how you manage people, you are going to build a great culture and a great organization, and people will love working for you. And part of what I've done over the years is, in addition to those principles, try to create transparency, as much transparency in an organization as possible. This is really tactical, but it really works well. Creating a company meeting every single month where you're highlighting what the growth of the company is, right? Like, I share most of the numbers, and because in the absence of fact, people make up their own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually not a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So share with them what is going on, and then share the successes, within the organization, also make sure that we're highlighting the core values of the organization, right? And we've got a dozen of them, but the ones that really harp on: urgency, teamwork, communication, and progress over perfection. Those come together, you create this culture where everyone's truly invested. And then at that point, right, like coming back to the recruiting piece and what Jack said, now you've created evangelists and you already have the people in the organization that are working. You just want more people like them. So they will go out and they will bring their friends in. I would say at this point, 80% of the folks that we have as certs were referenced in. People that knew somebody that brought them in. They weren't cold. They weren't off the street. About 20%, and we've done very well with those folks. But ultimately, it builds on itself when you're able to do that.
Yeah. The best way to hire people is referrals, where normally people will bring in people where they have maybe, mindset alignment, you can call it, where they believe in the same thing, because people will hang out with people like them. Gary, so what are the strategies that worked for you or you have seen working for best-in-class MSPs in terms of building a strong culture?
So here's what I'll do, because a lot's been covered by Jack and Jim. So let me drop down maybe one level, right, and kind of work the other way up. So one, I'm a big Vern Harnish fan. So scaling up, mastering the Rockefeller habits, putting the right meeting rhythms in place, right, that support what you're doing with culture and vision. But I'll take it down one level from there, which is, are you putting everyone in a position to be successful? Do they have a defined role? And I see companies with decent sized MSPs with 20 to 30 employees where a lot of people are wearing a lot of hats. And they always think they're running hot and they're frustrated, and the team is frustrated with them. And I always ask myself, when I'm unhappy with an employee, is it them or is it me? Have I put them in a position to be, are they in a small enough box where they know what their roles and responsibilities are? Do they have metrics that every day or week they know that they can have some control over, whether they're doing a good job or not? I find that most people want to do a good job, and many business owners, it is so nebulous what a good job is. It's more of a feeling than a definition. And if you can do that, I have found that my teams have figured out most of the stuff that I probably never would have figured it out once I put them in a position to be successful. We were both amazed, right, at how far they went. And it sounds simple, but it takes process and discipline. And without it, you can't connect what you do every day to that vision if you have one.
Yeah. So I think we all agree here that culture is important. Culture will lead to cash. People focused will lead to profit. And I think that's the bottom line here. So my last question, and then in the interest of time, there's just so much wisdom here, so much experience. I want to keep tapping into your brain and kind of share that with the world. My last question is, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing MSPs in the next 5 to 10 years? There's just so much changing with AI now, just like internet in 90s when everything changed. So there are a lot of new predictions what AI is going to do, and a lot of new things that are changing every day, especially in the technology landscape. So where do you see the biggest challenge for MSPs, and where do you see MSPs going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Sonny, this is a great time to ask this question. And because although you said, the internet, right, and tools changed everything in the 90s, in a way it did. It allowed us to change our commercial model, but honestly, it didn't change the business model. MSPs spend a lot of time doing tickets and doing projects, right? And that holds true today. I believe in the next 3 to 5 years, that will change. Projects revenue, which is really important, right? Professional services revenue isn't going to be the same. AI is going to affect support. We're not going to have the same role in support or security. So if that's the case, you have to start planning for that now and deciding, one, how do I make sure that I'm staying up with these changes? And there's a cost to it. So you got to run a profitable business. And then two, really that planning, that 3-year plan, right? 3-year targets, 1-year plan, and then what you're doing quarterly to actually move the needle becomes way more important. And I don't view it as obstacles. I view this as opportunities. There's going to be more opportunity for a segment of this market than we've ever experienced. We're already starting to see it. And I don't think everyone else gets wiped out. They just get left with the customers that nobody else wanted, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you, Gary. And Jim, what are your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, I love the question. There's a concept called winning on the transition. And I don't think that there's enough MSPs focused on the concept and the idea of winning on the transition. And there's a lot of transition. There's a lot to win on. There's a lot of opportunity. Most small businesses are using, or most small to mid-market, and even enterprise at this point, they're using SaaS applications, right? It's why we exist as a company at SaaS Alerts. But moving from a device-centric approach to managing IT to a user-based approach. We've been pricing this way for a while, but we haven't been really focused on delivering value around the user. That is a transition. You mentioned AI. That is a transition. What's going on right now in cybersecurity? There's transition points there. So identify where the industry is starting to pivot and then hone in on essentially winning on that transition.
Thank you, Jim. That's great advice. And Jack?
One of the words that Jim just used, focus. Focus precedes success. I'll take you back to 1998, and I had a company with 2 younger partners, and we were brainstorming about the business, and we had 52 different channels of business opportunities with Post-it notes on the wall. And I said, every one of them has opportunity in it, but we will be stretched too thin. So we went through a process of sorting through each of the 3 of us, what our favorite 10 were. And then wherever we found a match amongst the 3 of us, that survived. Then we went through it again and went through it again. And we ended up with 2 Post-it notes to build the business from, and 50 good business channels were on the floor. That company in 1998 was Inc. number 10 on the Inc. 500 with 10,100% growth. And Ernst & Young honored us as Entrepreneur of the Year. But it was because we picked a lane and owned the lane. And with all of the transitional change that's coming before us, as Gary and Jim talk about, all I can think about is MSPs trying to run after multiple rabbits. If you want to catch a rabbit, stay on the same one and you have a shot. But if you're out at the golf course and there's 10 of them munching on the grass, and each one you get a little bit closer to, you go after that one, they'll all wear you out and you'll have no rabbit. Find your lane, pick your lane, own your lane.
Yeah, find your lane and having that focus. Focus will help you own that future that you want to create. And Jim, thank you for sharing that winning on transition. And so identifying where to focus there, Jack, to your point. And thank you so much, Gary, Jim, and Jack, coming to my show. I truly, truly appreciate you. And thank you so much.
Good to see you all. Stay healthy.
Have a good one.
Thank you for watching Sunny's Silver Linings. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time.